bring this meeting of the Delaware Transportation Commission to order. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Howard, do you mind leading us?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time we'll move on to the public comment period. Anyone wishing to make public comments regarding matters either on or off the agenda and within the Commission's jurisdiction may do so at this time. However, the Commission is not permitted to act on non-agenda items. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the public hearing and conduct a public hearing to receive input on the 2018 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. Welcome, Mr. Tucker.
Meeting's just about.
Yes, sir. I think we can probably forego that. So in this part of the agenda is the public hearing. I'm assuming we're going to ask for public comment on the 2018 RTIP. Is there any public comment? Seeing no public comment, we will adjourn to the Policy Advisory Committee. The Technical Advisory Committee has met since the posting of the agenda, and there is an updated agenda available for anybody who needs it. So we will move on to the consent agenda. Meetings minutes of October 11th, 2017, minutes of November 6th meeting, and the clerk services contracting with the staff recommendation and TAC recommendation to award the clerk services contract to Rural Approaches and authorize director to execute the contract and review by council. Is there any public comment on consent agenda? Seeing none.
Move for approval.
Got a motion to approve?
Second.
And a second. Would you pull the vote, please?
Commissioner Fallman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hemmingson,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Policy Advisor Tucker,
Yes.
Chair Short.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to our policy administrative section. Looking to approve the 2018 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. Staff recommendation and TAC recommendation that by poll vote adopt resolution 2017-20 approving the 2018 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. Is there any public comment on this? Seeing no public comment, we'll move to Mr. Schwein.
Very good. Thank you. My name's Jeff Schwein. I'm filling in right now for Tamara Layton. So this is the 2018 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. The California Transportation Commission every 2 years develops a fund estimate based on the revenue projections from the federal and state governments that will be distributed to regional agencies and to the state. And the regional agencies are responsible for developing their list of projects and decide where they want to program their funding. So they develop this document called the Regional Transportation Improvement Program. They submit it to the state, and it gets wrapped into the State Transportation Improvement Program. This is a 5-year. It's a 5-year program. So basically, every 2 years you adopt a new 5-year program. So it just kind of moves along, and there's sometimes new funding and sometimes not. We haven't had new share capacity to program new projects since 2014. And in fact, in 2016, there was a deprogramming of transportation projects, mainly based on lack of revenue to the state. So with the passage of Senate Bill 1 last spring, it really provided a strong foundation to have a whole STIP again And so there was new capacity to program in the region and in the state in the amount of $2.9 million. This region, Del Norte County, has had an advance on their funding since 2006, and so therefore we're just kind of picking away at that funding with any new capacity that comes along. What's really helpful with Senate Bill 1 is it's going to allow us to have programming again 2 years prior to the time when we would have if Senate Bill 1 wasn't passed and come along. So it's a nice boost. It'll allow the region to have new funding capacity should things go as planned in 2020. So what is allowed to happen, even if you have an advance in a regional transportation improvement program, is to program up to 5% of your share capacity, which is about $143,000 for this region, to plan, program, and monitor projects that are ongoing, and develop projects to get ready for funding and for programming when the capacity comes back. So this regional transportation improvement program basically shows that there isn't any available new project money right now, except for the planning, programming, and monitoring, $143,000. And the recommendation from the TAC and staff is to adopt the Regional Transportation Improvement Program as it's shown in the staff report. Yep.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Questions for Jeff? We have a motion and a second. Will you pull the vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Policy Advisor Tucker?
Yes.
Commissioner Fallman?
Yes.
Commissioner Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Short?
Yes. Thank you for that. All right, we'll move on to letter E, Accounting and Reporting Services Contracting. Staff recommendation by polled vote, of course, is accept the TAC recommendation for a consultant to provide accounting and reporting services and authorize the director to execute the contract after review by council. The updated agenda says that there's a TAC recommendation that we authorize director to sign a contract with Chawel, Benz, and Hartwick after, of course, review by council. Jeff, do you have any comments for us on this one?
No, sir, you nailed it.
Thank you, sir. Is there any public comment on this item? There is no public comment. Bringing it back to the commission. We have a motion.
We do have that motion.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
A motion and a second. Can we hold the vote for this item also?
Commissioner Fallman?
Yes.
Commissioner Hemmingson?
I'm going to recuse myself on this item of a conflict.
Policy Advisor Tucker?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Chair Short?
And that's yes. Thank you. Moving on to the discussion items. St. George Reef Lighthouse Helipad. Noted we have a approved permit to use the helipad on the lighthouse. Jeff, did you have any additional information on this item?
Nope, just that information that there was a letter in the packet.
Okay, we noted that in the packet. Thank you very much. Moving on to last chance grade, Mr. Tucker, do you have any information for us?
Yes, I talked to Tamara, and she wanted me to share some information about the projects that are continuing to go on at last chance grade. So the damage that occurred this last winter and also the previous winter, we initiated some projects to address some of the issues up there, and particularly the cost of construction, $27 million to construct 4 additional walls and then repair 4 of the existing walls at last chance grade. So if you drive through there, you'll see a lot of activity even through the winter, and there will be some additional work that will be started during, once we get some additional contracts in place to start the next phase of work, which will probably start early summer. And I don't know if there are any questions about Last Chance Grade.
Go right ahead, Mr. Henningsen.
Yeah, Kevin, is there I guess then we're going to have stoplights on Last Chance Grade for the foreseeable future. I mean, we're going to be there for a while.
Yes, the work is going to continue, and for the foreseeable future, in order to have equipment at Last Chance Grade, they have to have one-way traffic control.
Right. The two projects that they're doing now where the stoplights are, isn't there two? Yeah, I think there's two. Are those going to go away at any time soon? Is there a timeline on those two projects?
There is a timeline on those projects. I can't speak to the specifics of when exactly that work is going to stop and then the other projects are going to start.
And that's a good point. I guess that's a question I want. Are those two projects going to be done before we start the new projects, the new walls and repairing of the other walls?
My understanding is that they're trying to get that other work started as quickly as possible, so the timelines are not sequential.
Okay.
So it's as soon as they can get the contracts in place, the work will start at the additional locations.
So we could have either more stoppages or longer stoppages, longer areas?
Yeah, I'd have to talk to the project manager, but I'm not sure exactly how the work is going to be coordinated at this time. But I imagine that they'll be looking at that as they get contractors on board and figure out, what the schedule is going to look like.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Tucker about Last Chance Grade?
Just make a few comments. The board was in Sacramento for a CSAC conference 2 weeks ago. Some of the board members, Jerry, myself, Lori, we took the opportunity to meet with Federal Highways, and we also took the opportunity to meet with Caltrans, Malcolm Doherty, specifically discussing this project. Malcolm, at the time, had recommended that we begin to facilitate some discussion with the California Transportation Commission in light of the upcoming $50 to $55 million ask, which will be coming in May, according to his timeline, where we try to elicit some of the commissioners and maybe the director to come up and see the project firsthand. There's two Northern California reps on the commission, Jim Arp and Jim Guillemetti, that he suggested we specifically talk with Jerry. Both Jerry and Lori met with Mitchell Wise to discuss that and basically get his blessing and Susan's blessing to talk to the commissioners to allow that process to take place, with anticipating that rather large ask would be hopefully stamped and approved when it took place in what he thought was May. He still anticipates, and which was also confirmed by Federal Highways, that the risk assessment that is taking place right now would come to fruition, he thought, late February, early March, which would give us some indication on whether or not Federal Highways agreed with if the alignment needed to be changed from its current location at Last Chance Grade and go around with some of the proposed alternative routes. And so we'll be eagerly awaiting that report.
And the $55 million ask is for the
Environmental work.
initiation of the environmental work?
Yep.
Yes, okay.
That's my understanding. Is that yours?
Completion.
Yeah, I do know that so yes, and the 55 million is for environmental. There's, the big thing is just getting started on the environmental studies based on the time that it will take to get through the environmental studies, through the environmental process. Getting that started earlier obviously will, help with the timeline for the overall project. So, yeah, that is important.
Thank you, sir. Moving on, our discussion items, the US 199 intersection at Elk Valley Crossroad. Mr. Duffy?
My favorite topic.
That's right.
So our traffic safety unit at Caltrans has taken a look at some of the suggestions from the commissioners. You know, there was a suggestion of looking at the Elk Valley, Kings Valley intersection and possibly, closing that in order to eliminate some of the conflicts, confusion related to the two intersections. The initial assessment is that there wouldn't be any reduction in collisions related to the Elk Valley Crossroad, which is really the intersection of concern. And so they didn't feel like making a recommendation for that intersection would have the benefits that we're looking for. And so I wanted to ask the board whether we wanted to look at some additional options for the Elk Valley Crossroad. Should we look at that intersection and the circulation, or what other things would you like us to look at?
Yeah, I wish I had some good ideas. My thought was if you get people to focus on Elk Valley at that intersection instead of having to focus on the Kings Valley intersection as well as the Elk Valley Crossroad intersection, that it would maybe help with that. But that takes me off the hook, so I'm good. I mean, I just put it out. I just threw it out there. I'm sure I would have gotten some flack from people for me even suggesting that, but I really kind of think that's awful busy when you come out of the redwoods, that you're all of a sudden, people who didn't know the area, do I turn here on this road to go north, or do I turn on the next one? So I just thought maybe it would make it less confusing, but they're not seeing that, so I'm no engineer, so I can't tell you that would make it better or worse. But I'm glad that they looked at it, and I appreciate that.
No, and I could also say it is appreciated, obviously, based on our previous concerns, which we've discussed and debated here at length. It is still, in my opinion, the best long-term option to find the necessary funding through the SHOP program to do a traffic calming setup specifically at the Elk Valley Crossroad and 199, which would be a roundabout. And I know our traffic counts, no matter how you put it, according to Caltrans, will never justify even a traffic signal at that location, which amazes me. So my advice is to find another methodology that's going to allow us to have the necessary effect that I think we all we need to see there, especially during our high traffic season, which is during the summer. That's going to allow for our transient guests and the people that call this place home to have a safe drive to and from the point of entry. That's my suggestion. Hopefully we'll get there together someday.
I think if I could,
Go right ahead, sir.
I think the cost of the roundabout, they said, was around $5 million. Am I right in that? Do you remember that, Kevin?
Yeah, some of the roundabouts that we've constructed recently were in the $5 to $6 million range.
Yeah, and I'm guessing this would be a big one because you would have to probably get more property in. They take up a lot of 20 million.
That's
So-
what I had heard at these meetings.
And it's probably completely out of the ballpark, and I don't even have any idea, but what's an overpass cost?
Yeah, when you start talking about putting in a structure, the cost is magnitude higher than that. So, yes, tens of millions. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what that would be, but yeah, that's even more expensive. I know that that's something that we've thought about, the fact that there isn't a way to get from 199 to 101 northbound. But it is a significant cost, and usually that is also something that is driven, by safety or some sort of operational need.
Well, I just was wondering if we're getting close on a roundabout, which I don't think will work. I mean, I don't think that is a good area for a roundabout. I think you'd have to reduce your speed so much. I mean, if you could reduce people's speed down to what it's gonna take you to go around a roundabout, you would never have an accident there.
My case in point is just looking at the one on, was it Highway 20 that they put in, was it Clear Lake? Or
Pretty close to Clear Lake.
Yeah.
pretty close to Clear Lake.
Yeah, it's 25 mile an hour,
No, you going into it doing 55.
no.
Yeah,
I just went through there.
eastbound, you went 299, didn't you?
Well, not this time, but the time before, I went 20. No, they slow you way down. When you
Prior
go-
to the roundabout.
Yeah, prior to the roundabout, you go past the,
Well, going past the casino heading east, speed limit's 55, isn't it?
yeah, but I think they have you slowing down, there's a speed limit sign.
So
And I don't remember what it is, 40
the
miles.
point is that you're coming into the roundabout slower,
Yeah,
which does everybody good. And to me, it's the most cost-effective process of moving traffic, as we've seen throughout the country. Whether you're looking at the place that started it all here in the United States, which is Vail, Colorado, and it's dramatically improved traffic movement, especially in high congestion areas, with just that simple feature,
Yeah.
and improved on it over the decades. This is something, at least the neighborhood, Mr. Haben in particular, has suggested as a way that we could solve and reduce the type of accidents that killed his mother.
yeah.
That's what I'm going on, and I will continue to push because I think it's an effective form of transportation. I've utilized a lot of them, especially the ones in Colorado and Vail, and those are some serious people movers. And that's the kind of traffic volumes we're seeing here in the summer when we got people going up to the national park. It's just my thoughts, and not to be contentious, but if you have a roundabout with high speeds going into it, which would obviously be coming off of 101 or Highway 199, folks would naturally have to slow for those intersections. I just don't see putting a stoplight there.
Yeah.
That's solving our problem.
No, I don't think a stoplight. My suggestion was an overpass, and if what Darren is saying is that the roundabouts are $20 million, then I don't think you're that far off from doing an overpass, and that's why I was wanting to
I
know
don't know.
if we're talking about, another $15 million difference, more expensive than the overpass, then we gotta be looking at something else, but if the costs are comparable or close,
Well, either way.
The $20 million price tag always had baffled me. I could not fathom how a roundabout would cost that much.
Well, I
money.
thought they'd said
Even a
something about-
sizable one like
about-
what we're talking about.
Yeah, I thought they were talking about $5 million or something, so, which is still substantial. I mean, certainly not worth a human life, but I mean,
No, it's not.
still substantial amount of money for what they're saying are low traffic volumes or traffic volumes that don't meet the criteria, so.
We're not the experts, Kevin, by any stretch of the imagination. We need the department's help on getting there with a reasonable solution, not just for that intersection, but also the intersection at Elk Valley and the 101, where I know we had an accident just recently there with an overturned vehicle. So we've got, unfortunately, two very busy highways in Del Norte County's busy highway standard that are only going to get busier, and we need to address the situation now before we market this community any further. I'm just saying.
It's a good point, and yeah, I hear you, and we have standards that we use to make decisions for funding for safety and operations across the state of California, and in future years when there is additional funding in the STIP, we might be able to talk about a project and contributing towards a project, whether it be a roundabout or interchange type improvements. That's something we can talk about in the future.
Well, maybe that's the approach. I mean, it's not the first time that this commission has advanced STIP dollars for state highway improvement projects, and 199, 197 being the prime example of that. We could certainly chew up 6 years of STIP funding on whether it's a $5 million project or a $22 million project, which was the price tag back then for 199. But I know if it's a priority project for this commission, we'll certainly be willing to leverage STIP funds against SHOP or anything else we could find for that matter. And if we have a program project that's fully gone through the project study reports and everything else that is necessary, and all this available SB1 money is going to be out there, then we pursue that for them or venue, which based on my conversations with Malcolm Doherty is definitely an alternative, because he's going to go after every funding source he can to make an alternate route around Last Chance Grade a viable project. Every funding source, which includes SB1. So obviously we've got a lot of highway issues to address here, and we're just looking for that help, Kevin. We appreciate you bringing any knowledge you can to get us to that point.
Yes, sir. Kevin, I know, I mean, in the past, we've seen Caltrans move those stop signs at 199 in Elk Valley basically into the lanes to narrow that crossing path. I mean, we've kind of tried a few different kind of options here, and we're all kind of grasping to find a good solution, and that we haven't quite found yet. So we'll keep looking and hope for some further solutions.
Forgive me if this is an elementary question or if we've covered it before, but I mean, why don't we just reduce the speeds in that area? And why don't we just reduce it by 10 miles or so?
They have reduced it somewhat.
So yes, reducing speeds is always a tricky question to answer in terms of, it's pretty straightforward in the vehicle code, how we set speeds. And it's based on how fast people are driving. 85th percentile is the metric that they use in terms of, we go out there, they measure 100 cars, they figure out what the 85th percentile is, and then using an engineering judgment, they're allowed to adjust the speed within 5 miles an hour, and that's the engineering discretion. Beyond that, there are some examples of, between Eureka Arcata in Humboldt County, there's a safety corridor, that was designated by the legislature. It's something beyond what the Department of Transportation can do. So speed is kind of tricky in that it's pretty defined in terms of how you can address speed.
You have to be careful what you ask for, because you can actually do a speed study and end up with a higher speed limit than was there before.
Any other questions for Mr. Tucker?
No, sir.
Okay, moving on to the 2018-19 overall work program. Jeff, have anything for us?
Yeah, so the local agency members and anybody who's involved in the TAC is going to be developing, reviewing the draft overall work program, and it's going to come back in January for you guys.
Okay, thank you, sir. Moving on to the 2016-17 audit. Well, I can speak for Mr. Hemmingson and myself. Met with the auditors, or reviewed the audit at Chawel, Benz, and Hartwick. And as it says on the updated report, there is no findings. They found no issues of concern. So we will be seeing that audit on our January agenda. Moving on to our 2018 State Highway Operations and Protection Program. Jeff?
Yeah, I don't really have anything on this item. I'm not sure if Kevin has something to say about the shop.
So in an effort to be more transparent, we've been working on providing more information about the shop projects that Caltrans does. And so this is the 2018 shop. So much like the STIP, the shop has a cycle, and so for the for 2018, you know, that those projects will be delivered over the next 4 years. So they have to get through, you know, environmental, through design, and then eventually to construction. And so we provided the list of projects. And so if you guys have any specific questions about projects, always feel free to reach out to me, and I can get you some more information about some of the specifics about the work that we're doing. And yeah, let me know.
Thank you, Kevin.
I think there was one question about why Elk Valley Crossroad wasn't in the shop, but apparently it might be being addressed with other sources of funding.
What, I'm sorry, what's the question?
Elk Valley Crossroad, Tamara was wondering why, or the TAC was, why it wasn't in the shop.
So Elk Valley Crossroad, it, you know, as we mentioned before, you know, it doesn't meet the thresholds for initiating a safety project. And so projects in the shop are based on safety and operations. And so a project hasn't been initiated at this time based on collision information, the information that's available at that location.
Thank you.
Is, not having looked at the shop recently, is 101 and Oak Valley Crossroads in there?
It is not, there is not a project at that location in the 2018 shop.
When would be a good time to, when is the shop published?
So this is the draft. I'd have to check. I'm not actually sure when.
So the
I don't know.
department seeks public comment at this time for the draft, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So, would it be in this commission's purview to request the department to look at those two intersections that we've discussed, which is 199 and Elk Valley Crossroad, and 199 and 101, from an operational standpoint in the shop? How would the commission go about doing that?
So if you look at the letter provided in the packet, I believe it takes you to a website that will allow you to comment on the 2018 shop. And so I think that would be an avenue for providing comments about specific projects or something that you believe is missing from
Yeah,
the shop.
I see the link there, and maybe Jeff, we could work with Tamara on comments from the commission to address those two intersections, and request some, not necessarily from a safety standpoint, but from an operational standpoint, those two intersections. I'm not sure how best to approach that. Maybe you would have some knowledge.
Yeah, well, there's a shop's funds request form, which is, but that's kind of after you've done some analysis and identified a problem there, which I think there's already been a problem identified there. Yeah, we can work with, you know, maybe with the commission's direction, staff could work on developing a more defined path forward for the commission.
Right.
To comment on this draft shop.
That would be nice. I mean, this is not all in District 3, but it seems to be landing in District 3 and District 4, these two particular projects. You know, we watched the tribal governments on Highway 101 specific to traffic calming, specifically safety projects with 101 piercing through their ranch area, and several deaths that occurred with pedestrians there. Them, the tribe, in this case Tuolumne Nation, going out and seeking Tiger 1 and Tiger 2 federal dollars in order to do those safety improvements. I know the shop is a specific set of funds, but if we could put in comments from this commission to Caltrans to be looking at that source of funding for operational purposes or whatever for those two intersections, and I'd love to have some guidance to that effect, or at least those projects identified in the shop is one thing that we as a commission and Caltrans are working towards.
And just for clarification, for example, for the Tiger or some of the other federal funding programs, Caltrans is allowed to submit a certain number of applications. And so we usually work with the transportation commissions and metropolitan planning organizations to select projects that the state will sponsor applications for those programs. And so if the commission has ideas for projects, then when we ask for those projects, that would be the time. There is also the opportunity for the commission itself to apply for a Tiger grant or some of these other programs. So that is also an option to consider.
Would the commission need an established PSR from Caltrans in order to apply for funds on the state highway?
Projects on the state highway system, yes, usually require a project study report. And especially with programs like Tiger, they want to see projects that have some sort of development in terms of doing some of the work to figure out the scope, schedule, and cost of improvements.
If I could. Certainly. Is there a way, and I don't want anybody to have to go to a whole bunch of trouble for this, but it would be interesting to know what the numbers were as we were talking about roundabouts on Highway 20, what those numbers showed and the accidents and all that stuff on how they got their two roundabouts on Highway 20 and how they put those numbers together to make that fit. Because as I remember, it never seemed to be much of a dangerous intersection. And I could be wrong, but maybe people feel the same way about this out here. But if that's not too much trouble, I mean, they must have had to do some studies and the same thing that we're looking at to do those roundabouts. It would be interesting to see those numbers and compare them to our numbers and just to take a look at it. Like I say, I don't want anybody to have to spend a lot of time or a lot of money, but if that stuff is available, is there a chance we could look at that?
Yes, I can track down some of the information. So just as I think we were talking about the intersection of 20 and 29, they're currently working on a roundabout at the intersection of 20 and 53. So there
But
would
isn't there
probably
two-
some more fresh information
Isn't
related
there
to that
two of them
project.
on 20?
There is.
There's two of them. There's one at 29, but then there's one that's east of that, isn't there?
Yes,
And I don't
so
know
this
what
would be a
that,
third roundabout.
yeah, and I don't know what that next intersection is,
Yeah, I can't think of
but it's not
the name of it.
Yeah, it's, it's just a road, I think. I don't think it's but it'd be interesting to see the numbers on those two, whether there's accidents or what the reasoning was for putting those two roundabouts in. And so maybe we could follow some of those guidelines if that.
That's still Region 1, right?
Great, thank you, Mr. Tucker. Should we put that in as a discussion item, Mr. Tucker? What do you think about a timeline for bringing back that information?
Maybe not at the next meeting, but the following meeting. I'd like to see where the 2053 roundabout is. I think it's currently in design, so there might be some really good information in terms of.
That one I can see. I would think that one.
Because that one is a,
Pretty heavy
it's there are some similarities in terms of there's a hill, so there's increased speeds related to that, and two facilities, it's 53 and 20, so that might be a good one to look at.
That only goes, doesn't that intersection there dead end? I mean, it doesn't go through, does it?
No, it's a T intersection.
It's a T.
Just
Yeah.
a T intersection, so that would be interesting to see the information on that too.
good comments by Mr. Hemmingson.
Yes, thank you. And Susan, would you make a note for Tamara, just to let her know that that should be on?
Tamara,
Two
I'm sure is
agendas
watching us right
Oh,
now.
that's very possible.
Hi, Tamara.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so one question for Kevin. When are the comments due on the 2018 shop? Is there a deadline for those?
I just was looking, I think it says January 2nd, but it is in,
January 2nd, 2018.
yes,
later.
January 2nd.
Be a little
Okay.
tough to make that time.
Yeah, well, Tamara did mention that she could write a letter
Yeah.
providing comments on the shop, with your direction.
That would be very
It
good.
would be our direction.
Yes,
Okay.
for
By
sure.
consensus here, I'm seeing heads nod.
Yes, yes, we do definitely have consensus on that. Okay, moving on to commissioner comments and reports. Do any of the commissioners have any items?
I've got one.
Mr. Howard?
And this is going to go back to Kevin as a question. All the guardrail work along Highway 101 in Humboldt County between here and essentially Eureka now has been pretty extensive. And I know we looked to just do a very simple section on Highway 197 where there's some precarious locations just up from 101. Couldn't get any traction or movement on it, and based on what I've seen, there's been a heck of a lot of new guardrail put on 101.
You're talking about
between
those wonderful sections that'll take you right to the river? if
here.
you
Yeah,
happen
those
to
wonderful
swerve?
sections that will
Yes.
take you right to the river. So curious on,
And so you're speaking, on 197, you're talking about a new guardrail locations? So I can speak a little bit about the work that's going on 101. The standards have changed for guardrail, based on the size of vehicles. There are a lot of SUVs on the road, and so the newer standard for guardrail is, you notice that it's higher, and that's to account for taller vehicles. And so we're replacing a lot of the existing guardrail. So that project is specific to existing locations and upgrading it to the new standard.
but there's been new locations added too, correct? I could have sworn I've seen some new locations.
Yeah, I can't speak to whether there are new locations or not, but I can,
I thought there were some new locations that have gone in, but anyways, love to see that very precarious section on 197 addressed sometime soon.
Yeah, and speaking of that, the high friction material, is it down now?
yes, so it's in place. I asked for pictures that I could share with the commission. Unfortunately, they use this material, it's called bauxite, and, in other locations, it's very obvious. The pictures they showed me, it wasn't obvious on 199. and
That's why I was,
so
that's why I was
I-
asking, because.
I had a picture and I was going to bring it, but you can't tell that it's
tell.
any different, but it is. They
Yeah.
applied high friction surface treatment
I know I tried to go really, 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 really fast.
at the locations.
Really held on tight. I'm just curious.
No comment.
No comment. Other than Mr. Hemmingson, do we have any other comments or reports from the commission?
I did have some information, I don't know if we have time,
We
but
do.
I have a couple of pictures
Certainly.
related to Chris Howard's comments about 199, 197 in terms of driver confusion. So I showed up a little late, but I have some pictures if I could.
Love to see them.
That'd be great.
Love pictures.
Everybody likes pictures.
So a little bit of background, the previous, the October meeting, there was some discussion about, as you're approaching 197 from 199, that drivers would get confused about which direction, whether they wanted to go towards Crescent City or north on 187 towards Oregon. And so we looked at the signage in that location, and what traffic safety, they agreed that if you look at the existing sign, it's really close to the intersection. I think that we measured 95 feet, which doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to make a decision, and so we think that that may have been what was causing the issue of drivers stopping and trying to figure out which way they needed to go. And so what we're proposing, or what we are planning to do is remove the existing sign and replace it with two signs. The first sign would identify North Bank Road, and then further up, we would remove a sign that shows that there's a road coming up, and place a more clear sign that gives drivers plenty of time to know which direction they're going, whether they're going to 101 or to 199. So hopefully that will address the concern, and we did agree that it was something that was pretty easy to address. And so we put in a work order. That is something our maintenance crews, once the sign comes in, they'll put the sign out there. We plan to have that in place before next summer and the tourist season starts, so.
If you could go back.
Yeah, you said ooh, and I thought, I was thinking the same thing. Is that the design of the sign that's being ordered, Jeff?
I can't say whether that's the specific sign, but that,
I don't like.
instead of separating the two, because the previous sign, it was, the two signs were in one. And so there were actually 3 arrows in the sign, and so it was kind of confusing about.
Exactly. And that was another comment that I wanted to make, is that you have 3 arrows pointing in 3 different directions. The 2 should be pointing in the same direction.
Yeah, so this is the sign that's going to be removed, and you can see that
Right.
there's 3 arrows. It's confusing to drivers when you have a very short amount of time to make a decision about which direction you're going. So hopefully this will
Yeah.
address any of those issues.
It does, and you're going to be my hero for bringing this forward to your safety and traffic folks. So the triangle that's painted there on the ground that oftentimes gets covered up in the winter with all the sand that gets dumped there for the ice overs. You know how on the Elk Valley Crossroad intersection with 199 we have the reflectors that are plastic that stand up about 2.5 feet or so? That triangle gets used a ton by traffic to stop and sit because of
And read their map.
read their maps. For whatever reason, I've seen entire semis parked in there, blocking lanes because they've either missed a turn or whatever reason. That triangle gets used a lot, and I've seen it actually cause problems because it blocks visibility. I think that would be a very cheap, inexpensive fix, is to tar tack those,
Channel markers.
yeah, whatever you call them, around that whole area so it keeps people out of that triangle.
So yeah, delineators, that's something, I will mention that again. We thought mainly the issue was driver confusion, so the signs should hopefully eliminate drivers from trying to figure out which direction they need to go. But if there is additional issue, then
It-
we can,
it
that would be
is,
something that we could look at.
So the issue is, as you're approaching north to south, so coming into this intersection on Highway 197, there's a slight grade that comes in, and you can't see that that you're turning to the right to make this intersection. So people are coming to a stop to turn left and head to Grants Pass on Highway 199. They're stopping actually in the middle of that triangle because the road, it has that funky turn in it for the approach to that T. And it's a really steep angle to approach that T. That's another reason that they're going into that triangle. It just doesn't have to do with the 199 traffic that's actually missing their turn because of the signage issue. So it's a grade raise on top of a a funky turn into that intersection. Just my simple fix, but your traffic guys could probably figure it out better than me.
And could you go back to the picture of the new sign? The next one. So I guess that's fine. I think the other sign said Smith River and Oregon. And I think the Oregon sign was the one that had the straight arrow. That's probably good. That I like a lot better.
Yes.
Me too.
A little more than 95 feet is going to be very
Here I
beneficial.
thought
I think.
Caltrans never listened to us. I'm gonna have to eat my words.
Yeah, we heard you, and it's on order, so it's happening.
That's awesome.
Deal.
You're gonna make a lot of Haiichi folks very, very happy with just some simple fixes here.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Appreciate the pictures.
Yeah, very
Okay.
much so.
So we're going to move on and adjourn as the Policy Advisory Committee and reconvene as the Delaware Local Transportation Commission and poll a vote for the actions taken. If you wouldn't mind, Susan.
I'd make that motion.
Oh, hey, I guess we need a motion. I did that last meeting. I apologize for that. Do we have a motion to accept the actions of the Policy Advisory Committee? I believe
I made the
Mr.
motion.
Howard made the motion.
Second.
And Mr. Hemmingson makes the second. Is there any public comment? Seeing no public comment, would you mind now pulling the vote?
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Hemmingson,
Yes.
Commissioner Fallman,
Yes.
and Chair Short.
Yes, thank you. With that, we will adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting, January 10th at 3 p.m. Thank you all for coming.
Awesome news, Mr. Tucker.
Yeah, that's very good news.